A few days ago, I was talking to somebody about some of the different drills and tests that I use to practice at the range. And he asked me what I thought about those diagnostic pistol targets or correction charts you can print out. You've probably seen one of these. They're all over the internet, and there are even some commercially printed ones you can buy. The idea is that you shoot at this target, and based on where your misses are, the chart will tell you what you're doing wrong. Plenty of other people have done a pretty good job of critiquing these targets, but this isn't the first time I've been asked about them, so I'll throw in my 2 cents. For the kind of handgun shooting most people seem to be interested in, I think these targets are a waste of time. It's my understanding that the most popular form of the diagnostic chart that we see today was originally developed many years ago for one-handed slow-fire bullseye shooting at 25 yards. If you want to get better at two-handed rapid-fire defensive or practical style shooting, you're not going to get much relevant advice from a bullseye correction chart. So I guess that raises the question of why we don't just create a new version of the target that is intended for modern practical shooting. I'm sure someone will attempt to make something like that if it hasn't already been done, but I doubt that target would be very helpful either. I don't actually know much about traditional bullseye shooting, so I can't say whether that diagnostic chart is helpful in that context, but I do know that for practical shooting, it's almost impossible to determine what somebody's doing wrong solely by looking at their target. There is maybe one exception to that rule. For a right-handed shooter, if your shots are consistently going low and to the left, that's typically an indication of some form of recoil anticipation. That's a very common problem. But even knowing that, the target doesn't tell us the whole story. Recoil anticipation can mean a lot of different things. If you've got hits low and left, you might be dipping the muzzle as you pull the trigger, or you might be jerking the trigger at the last second before the shot breaks, or you could even be closing your eyes, and all that's going to be masked by the recoil, and you're not going to know exactly what you did wrong by looking at the target. And that's a best case scenario for target reading. That's assuming all your misses are grouped in one area. What if your target looks more like a shotgun pattern and you've got holes all over the place? That's usually the result of several overlapping problems. If you're anticipating recoil and you've got issues with bad grip and trigger control, a chart is not going to help you figure out why one shot went high and one went over to the left. So what's the alternative? Well, I know it's not the answer a lot of people want to hear, but the absolute best way to improve is to get help from a qualified shooting instructor who can actually watch you shoot and give you feedback. Looking at the target doesn't always tell us what we need to know, but a good shooting coach can usually watch the shooter, usually just their hands, and determine a lot about what they need to work on. I know it's not as easy as printing out a target, but there's really no substitute for a good shooting instructor. Now, the good news is that eventually you can develop the skill of coaching yourself a little bit. And in my experience, that can sometimes involve finding clues based on where your misses are on the target. But instead of consulting some kind of universal chart, you have to refer to your own experience and coaching feedback you may have received in the past. So, for example, I shoot a 6-round bill drill, and afterwards I think, maybe I didn't have such a great sight picture on some of those shots. Then I look at my target to confirm that, and I see that, yes, some of my hits are high. So that would probably tell me I'm letting my trigger finger get ahead of my sights. I need to be more patient and let my sights dictate when I fire. Now, that could still be a misdiagnosis of the issue, but over time, I have learned that's an error that I'm personally prone to making on a string of rapid fire at close range. But then if I back up and shoot a drill at 20 yards and I've still got hits that are high, that probably means something different. If I'm pretty confident that I had good trigger control, high misses at that distance are sometimes evidence that I'm letting my focus drift toward the target and away from the front sight. The location of the misses can tell me something, but it's really dependent on the context and on the individual shooter. Someone else could shoot the same drills and have a target that looks exactly like mine, but they could be struggling with totally different issues. So before you can expect a specific pattern of missed shots on your target to be a useful part of your troubleshooting process, you just have to do the time and put in some hours on the range. And for less skilled shooters in particular, you really need an actual qualified teacher to watch you shoot. There is no magic target that's going to make you a better shooter.